until he found it, a yellow living bridge that seemed to breathe, spanning across a deep gallery. On the other side, he could feel the vein pulsing with pure mana, but there was just one problem. A massive deep worm rested inside the bridge, its body occupying the entire space. The beast dozed, probably recovering after excavating new galleries. Ren studied the situation. He couldn't use force. The slightest conflict would attract predators, not that he had much force to use anyway. He also couldn't make it explode like a lesser worm because this one had a real core. He needed the worm to move of its own volition. A pulse from his mushrooms showed him the surroundings, searching for nearby tunnels and threats. Fused worms are territorial, he remembered while formulating a plan, and this one should be resting in its territory. Ren extracted the weaver's thread while studying the situation. He had no choice, he needed to cross. He tied one end of the thread to a stalactite above the bridge that would serve as an anchor point, and if he calculated the distance correctly. With precise finger hits, he began generating vibrations in the ground. Not just any pattern, but a specific one that mimicked an injured hunter bug. The kind of prey a fused worm couldn't resist. Practically no beast here could. Hunter bugs were the pre-evolution of deep ascens. If a worm or beetle could take revenge on them, they would do so without hesitation. That's why very few reached the surface if they hadn't achieved evolution along the way. The worm stirred in its sleep, disturbed by the vibrations of the intruder in what it considered its resting space. The deep worm finally awoke, irritated. The enormous beast moved almost immediately, its massive body turning toward the sound's source. Ren wrapped the thread around his hand, connected to a particularly robust stalactite to avoid it breaking. The worm approached, each segment of its body pulsing with anticipation while searching for easy prey. Ren waited until the last moment when the beast was fully committed to the search. He pushed off from the ground, the thread tensing as his body swung over the bridge. The worm detected that there was nothing at the movement's location, but it was too late. Ren was swinging above, his feet barely avoiding grazing the beast's enormous body. He landed on the other side just as the worm realized it had been deceived, but his landing generated a vibration. The beast changed direction with surprising speed for its size, of course. It could transform its rear into its head. It followed Ren, its entire body vibrating with irritation. Ren didn't wait. He ran toward the cave, pulsing with the vein's light, and reached an unexcavated tunnel section where the hard rock would slow the worm. Yet the beast followed, its massive body crushing and scraping rock and minerals in pursuit. Enjoy new adventures from free web novel. Too interested, Ren thought while running. Worms normally avoided making so much noise. It shouldn't want to run directly toward the vein for too long either. Something was wrong with its persistence. In general, Ren had felt something strange in the cave from the beginning. The beasts were more excited than they should be, constantly. A glow ahead caught his attention, the mana vein. It was close, so close. His fingers worked quickly with another piece of thread while running. If the worm caught up before he reached it, he wouldn't let it. He just had to swing again and he'd be safe. Ren made a slip knot. The tunnel widened slightly. The worm accelerated. Ren could almost feel its exact location under the rock by the intensity with which it dug. It was the beast's most vulnerable moment, and yet it kept pursuing. Then Ren felt it. A different sensation in the tunnel. Something moved behind them. Something that had been attracted by the commotion. The strange sensation was silence. The worm's digging was the only thing that could be heard. A sudden silence. The constant scraping of general excavation ceased, as if all creatures held their breath. All others had stopped to hide. The deep assassin emerged like a living shadow. Its body arched with lethal precision, the proboscis extended like a nightmare lance. The strike was so fast, Ren barely saw it. The proboscis pierced the rock as if it were water, going through exactly above the worm. The beast froze almost instantly, its massive body paralyzed at the moment of impact. Ren stopped, his heart beating so hard he feared the sound would give him away. The assassin was just meters away, its matte black body absorbing all light while beginning the feeding process. With infinitely slow movements, Ren backed toward the vein. The assassin was completely focused on its prey. Ren deduced that the worm had been fleeing, probably after detecting the predator's presence after chasing Ren a bit, but when it wanted to stop, it was already too late. Ren continued moving away with extreme slowness. Each step away from the assassin seemed to last an eternity. The vein glowed tantalizingly close, but one sound, one careless movement. The sound of moving fluids filled the tunnel. The assassin had begun consuming its prey, its proboscis injecting enzymes that would liquefy the worm from inside. Ren continued backing away, every muscle tense with the effort of maintaining absolute silence. The vein's glow intensified with each step, just a little more. But he couldn't move this slowly for so long. Ren was drenched in cold sweat. The mana was so dense it was suffocating him. The tentacles were almost saturated. He had maybe 10 minutes before the excess would overload him. He continued backing away, but the mana pressure became unbearable. Ren tried to maintain concentration, but his senses began to cloud. With trembling fingers, he extracted the last tentacle, needing to release some of the overload. The slow movement, the pain, the concentration on the tentacle, and the fear of the killer made him distracted too much, and his foot hit a loose stone. The sound, barely louder than a whisper, seemed to resound like thunder in the tunnel's silence. The deep assassin turned instantly, its matte black body moving with unnatural fluidity. The slow movement, the pain, the concentration on the tentacle, and the fear of the assassin made Ren distract too much, and his foot hit a loose stone. The sound, barely louder than a whisper, seemed to resound like thunder in the tunnel's silence. The deep assassin turned instantly, its matte black body moving with unnatural fluidity. With no time to think, Ren threw the tentacle. The improvised projectile flew straight toward one of the assassin's legs, beginning to absorb mana at the moment of impact. The beast recoiled, more from surprise than damage. Its senses, adapted to darkness and vibrations, hadn't expected an aerial attack. The sensation of its energy being drained at a specific point made it focus on that area. Ren didn't waste a second. His hands were already knotting the thread while the assassin was distracted. A quick jump and his body hung far from the ground. The training with Lin and his extra bit of strength gave him enough capacity to reach quite high. The thread began to turn slowly, the tension from the initial launch creating a circular movement. Ren held his breath while the assassin searched for its attacker, its proboscis extended and ready, but Ren kept slowly rotating. That's when he saw it. The chamber opened about 10 meters below, illuminated by the glow of a colossal crystal. The formation was both beautiful and terrifying, its facets reflecting mana light in a way that made it seem alive. In the center, a hollow, the vein itself. Pure mana flowed in a silent geyser that fed the crystal's growth, and there on a ledge near the base, 2 eggs. The first wasn't a surprise. A hunter bug, exactly one of the 2 he expected to find if he found anything. The egg had the characteristic pattern of its species, promise of a silent and lethal predator. But the second, Ren had to contain an exclamation that would have been fatal. His eyes couldn't be seeing correctly. It was impossible. The egg had the unmistakable design of a lesser carbon shark. What could one day evolve into a diamond hydra? Knowledge flowed frantically while he rotated in silence, the assassin still searching below. Diamond hydras were legendary silver rank 3 creatures, so rare in history that many doubted their existence. It makes no sense, he thought, while the thread kept turning. Hydras form much deeper than bugs or beetles, close to their dragon mothers in the depths. An egg like this shouldn't be here, so high up in such a small vein. The probability of a hydra egg not hatching before reaching here was infinitesimal unless knowledge whispered a possibility. The core of an adult hydra, collected by the highest level of assassins, passed from one to another in their territorial battles. A core that was finally released when its last possessor reached golden or platinum rank and somehow managed to ascend high enough to be reborn. But it was speculation. It was as if there was a void in the information. A mystery his mushrooms couldn't decipher at this rank. What he did know was that he wanted it. A diamond hydra's skill set in its early levels was exceptional. Though primarily defensive, it didn't lack offensive capabilities, and its versatility far surpassed that of a hunter bug or digger beetle. While slowly rotating on the thread, Ren considered his options. If he sought speed and offensive power, the mirror mantis remained his best choice. But a hydra, even if he didn't choose it as his first, it could be perfect as a second battle beast in the future. A movement in the chamber interrupted his thoughts. A creature emerged silently from a side opening. Its body was elegant but alien. A long, sinuous neck supported 2 heads that had jaws reminiscent of sharks. It moved on 2 powerful legs, and its scales were transparent, shining like living diamonds under the crystal's light. Knowledge couldn't confirm its identity, but it was obvious it had to be an evolved diamond hydra. Its presence radiated gold rank power, which raised a disturbing question. How could a beast of that level survive in an environment with so little mana? The answer came immediately. The hydra approached the geyser, extending one of its heads directly into the flow of pure mana. It began absorbing energy directly from the source. The pieces started fitting together in Ren's mind. A silver rank hydra with a single head must have been expelled from its territory. By luck or instinct, it found this vein. The constant flow of pure mana allowed it to survive and evolve, completing all silver ranks until reaching gold. The beast finished feeding and moved languidly toward the egg. Its body coiled around it in a protective gesture, but its movements were slow, almost lethargic. Despite the geyser, the vein was too small to keep it truly active at this superior rank. Soon it would need to return to the depths, but as he watched the beast settle, Ren understood something more. The cycle of hydras at higher ranks must be very different from deep assassins, worms, or beetles. That was his assumption, seeing the protective behavior with the egg. It seemed that egg dynamics were more complex than he had expected. Knowledge revealed more. The colored eggs containing the 3 known evolutionary line possibilities only formed when veins passed near the mothers, the dragons of each evolutionary line dwelling much deeper below. That's where brown eggs formed, for example, having bugs, beetles, and moles as options. What arrived here was different. They were cores returning to the cycle thanks to the deep assassins. These creatures collected the complete cores of their prey. displaying them as trophies on their backs. As they evolved, they fought among themselves for these collections. But upon reaching gold or platinum rank, something changed. They discarded their trophies, casting them into the depths. Most of these discarded cores were reborn as basic iron evolution in the lower levels, only to be devoured again. But some managed to ascend, transformed by their journey through mana-saturated zones. That's why most hunter bugs and digger beetles became living tunnels or deep assassins. The dense mana shaped them during their ascent. That's why there are so few young stages at this height, Ren understood. Those who managed to climb high enough had the chance to evolve along the way. It was a perpetual cycle. The assassins collected, fought, evolved, and finally released. The cores fell, were reborn, ascended, or were hunted to try again. And occasionally, very occasionally, one reached high enough without evolving. Worms were slightly different. They weren't born from eggs like other beasts. They emerged from the depths, fleeing from even deeper zones in the same way. Those who managed to reach higher levels were the survivors of a deadly race from the abyss. It was a cycle generated by the mother worm, the devourer dragon of the depths. From its skin, thousands of worms were constantly born, or so they said in his stories. His knowledge didn't reach that far yet. But where worms had no parental care nor beetles, where assassins began collecting cores from bronze rank, hydras clearly had different behaviors beyond gold rank. Perhaps it was parental care that allowed them not to need to rise to high levels to evolve and made them so rare. But as these were behaviors of creatures not within his knowledge range, it was a missing piece of the puzzle, an aspect of the cycle that current knowledge couldn't reveal. What did hydras do in their highest ranks? Why would an egg be here, next to one of higher rank, when most beasts abandon their eggs to the cycle? The deep assassin kept searching, and Ren hung between two mysteries, the predator that couldn't see him, and the hydra that defied everything he thought he knew about the beast-egg cycle. With careful movements, Ren extracted the flask with the potion Zhao had given him. The green liquid glowed softly as he uncorked it. It was his last defense against mana overload. The deep assassin kept searching, and Ren hung between two dilemmas. The predator that couldn't see him, and the hydra that defied everything he thought he knew about the beast-egg cycle. With careful movements, Ren extracted the flask with the potion Zhao had given him. The green liquid glowed softly as he uncorked it. It was his last defense against mana overload. The taste was bitter and metallic, but the effect was immediate. The crushing pressure of mana receded, as if a window had been opened in a suffocating room. It wouldn't last long, but it would have to be enough. The deep assassin finally lost interest in its search. Its sensors detected no more movement, and the paralyzed worm promised a feast it didn't want to waste. The beast returned to its prey, its proboscis sinking back into the liquefied flesh. Now or never, thought Ren as he began descending the thread. He descended with extreme care and retrieved the stone that had betrayed him. He was now meters from the predator that had returned to the tunnel entrance. He would deal with that obstacle at the exit later. First, he had to take advantage of his luck. It was a unique opportunity, a miracle of the cycle that wouldn't repeat for centuries, or so he thought. The chamber opened below him, the massive crystal dominating the space with its pulsing light. The hydra dozed around the egg, apparently exhausted by the effort of existing at this depth. He still had to move with perfect caution. One sound, one sudden movement, and all would be lost. If the assassin didn't kill him, the hydra certainly would. Ren studied the crystalline formation more carefully. The enormous crystal formed a natural bowl, its facets creating levels and ledges that could serve for a safer approach. I don't need to get all the way there, he thought while pulling out more weaver's thread. I just need the right position. The bowl's edge offered a perfect spot. From there he could manipulate the thread without exposing himself too much to the geyser or the hydra. His fingers worked quickly, preparing a knot while evaluating angles. The mantis core would also need pure mana. The solution was elegant. He could leave it suspended near the geyser, allowing the flow to saturate it naturally. In 10 days it would have absorbed enough to begin its transformation. But for that to happen, he needed the hydra to stop feeding from the geyser's mana. The hydra remained motionless, its two heads resting near the egg. Not really its child, he reflected while tying the mantis core to leave it suspended. The egg contained another hydra's core, yes, but it was another that had somehow not completed the cycle and ascended here. It was more like an evolutionary sibling, part of the same line but not direct offspring. Ren liked to think it was a species with parental care, but was it more like a strong siblinghood? Perhaps that's why the hydra protected it, not from maternal instinct but from lineage recognition. A Siskin hydra? Ren shook his head at his own silly joke and continued working. Perhaps nervousness was making him think foolish things. But the dilemma was clear. He needed the hydra to leave. And if the egg disappeared, what reason would it have to remain in this small, limiting vein? His feet touched a ledge. Pure mana flowed in the chamber, not at silver ring level, but triple the normal at this depth. Even with the potion still in effect, Ren could feel the energy trying to saturate his system. The bug egg was closer. It would be easier to reach first, safer. But the Hydra egg, the chance to understand such a rare evolutionary line. Ren took a step toward the better egg. The rock under his feet was strangely slippery, polished by years of exposure to pure mana. Each movement required total concentration. A slip here would be fatal. Another step. The Hydra breathed deeply, its body moving in a slow but steady rhythm. Ren wondered how long it spent like this, conserving energy between feedings, trapped in this endless cycle of minimal survival. The egg was within reach of his thread now. Its surface gleamed with the same tone as its sister's scales, as if already containing the promise of what it could become. A sound from above, the assassin moving its prey. Ren froze, but the beast was just repositioning itself above the worm for better access. The potion still kept the mana at bay, but Ren could feel its effect beginning to diminish. Time was running out. The first throw had to be perfect. Ren breathed deeply. The knot swayed gently as he positioned it. The thread flew silently, settling right over the egg. With a soft but firm pull, the loop closed around his prize. Ren waited a moment. The Hydra didn't move. With infinite care, Ren began lifting the egg. Each centimeter was an eternity, the dead weight making the thread creak almost imperceptibly. When the egg was secure, Ren extracted the thread for a second throw. Was it greedy? Maybe, but he wouldn't waste an opportunity like this. The bug's egg ended up in his hands a few seconds later. The core was left floating in the energy flow, immediately beginning to absorb pure mana when the Hydra would leave. In 10 days, maybe he could come in 11 or 12, as he didn't know when the Hydra would wake. With luck, it would be ready then. The Hydra moved slightly, one of its heads adjusting in sleep. Without the egg next to it, how long would it take to notice its absence? With nothing to protect, instinct would push it to seek areas with more mana, to reunite with others of its kind. This small vein would no longer have purpose for it. Ren carefully stored the second egg in his backpack too. Now he had to get out of here. He began his careful ascent toward the cave entrance, toward the assassin. The potion was losing effect. He needed to get out of here before mana saturated his system again. One last look at the magnificent creature. Part of him felt guilty for stealing something it had been protecting, but another part knew he might be doing it a favor. The Hydra was too powerful a beast to be limited to this low-power existence. We'll meet in the depths, he thought, while beginning the final ascent. When we're both stronger. Ren extracted the small stone from his pocket, the same one that had revealed his presence before. The traitorous stone would now save him. The irony wasn't lost on him as he calculated the throwing angle. Simple, he thought, feeling the egg's weight on his back. The assassin investigates the noise. I run through the tunnel. With luck, its prey will keep it close, and it won't follow me for long. But a voice in his head whispered that he should have left the second egg. 15 minutes of potion wasn't much time to ascend 300 meters, especially if he had to move stealthily. An encounter with any beast would be disastrous. Too late for doubts, he told himself while tensing his arm. The assassin remained focused on its feast, its proboscis buried deeply in the worm. The stone flew in a perfect arc until it hit a ledge Ren hadn't noticed. The impact sound was like thunder in the silence. Instantly, the assassin launched toward it, and Ren advanced to the entrance still silently. He had to let the assassin move a bit further until the stone bounced, its trajectory altered, sending it directly toward the crystalline chamber. Ren watched in horror as the traitor stone rolled down the bowl. The sound amplified by the crystalline formation. Each bounce was louder than the previous one, creating a cascade of echoes that filled the tunnel. The assassin turned instantly toward the noise and froze for a moment. The Hydra awoke. Ren watched in horror as the traitorous rock rolled down the bowl, the sound amplified by the crystalline formation. Each bounce was louder than the previous one, creating a cascade of echoes that filled the tunnel. The assassin turned instantly toward the noise and froze for a moment. The Hydra awoke. Its two heads rose in perfect synchronization, transparent scales gleaming as it uncoiled. For a moment it seemed confused, as if not understanding what had awakened it. Then it noticed the egg's absence. The roar that followed made the assassin instinctively back away. The Hydra rose completely, its two heads moving in search patterns while the crystallized mana in its scales began pulsing with contained power. Run, Ren's mind screamed. Run! The Hydra turned both heads directly toward Ren, its eyes glowing as it recognized him as the egg thief. This was no longer a stealthy escape. The beast had seen him. Stealth no longer mattered. Ren ran like never before, each step resonating in the tunnels while the Hydra's roar made the walls tremble. Knowledge flowed. Silver rank 3 Hydras could shoot power rays, concentrated beams of light. This one, at gold rank, probably had even more lethal capabilities, but knowledge didn't reach that far. A strong vibration shook the tunnels. The Hydra had begun moving, its massive body crushing rock while following its prey. Fortunately, it wasn't shooting. It needed to conserve energy. With its feeding from that small vein, each use of power meant minutes of recovery. 30 minutes, Ren calculated while running. It will need to feed after 30 minutes of intense activity with so little mana. The first obstacle appeared, the natural bridge he had crossed before. The structure trembled with each impact of the Hydra digging behind. Ren didn't even hesitate. He used the momentum from running to jump and grab the thread, the eggs bouncing on his back as he landed on the other side. A group of deep worms emerged from a side tunnel, their massive bodies momentarily blocking the path. At the Hydra's next roar, the beasts writhed in panic harder and fled in the opposite direction, crushing each other in their rush to escape. The deep assassin passed by him like a shadow, but didn't even stop to look at him. The beast ran on pure survival instinct, its prey forgotten before a much greater threat. Behind, the sound of rock being pulverized echoed in the tunnels. The Hydra wasn't bothering to follow the passages, it was creating its own direct path toward Ren. Ren ran down the now cleared path following his steps. The potion's effects were beginning to fade, and Ren could feel energy accumulating in his system. His legs burned with the effort of climbing, each step heavier than the last. The living tunnel he had seen earlier now blocked the path, its body occupying the entire gallery. Ren stopped abruptly, trapped between the beetle and the approaching Hydra. Ren wanted to scream in frustration, but it would be dangerous if the beetle confused him with a bug for a moment and stomped on him. So he had to position himself and strike hard with his feet in a unique rhythm of the living tunnel species that suggests danger. But Ren was light, so the vibration didn't convey enough urgency. The beast turned slowly. The sound of pulverized rock approached. One of the Hydra's heads appeared in the tunnel, its scales gleaming threateningly. The beetle finally sensed the danger and began turning quickly, but it was too late. The Hydra was too close. Ren could see mana concentrating in its throat. It was considering using a ray. The living tunnel moved faster to back away, creating a small opening. Ren lunged for the space, but his foot slipped. He fell to his knees just as the Hydra fired. The ray passed over his head, impacting the living tunnel. The beast collapsed, split in two, its shell smoking. The Hydra paused for a moment, its breathing heavier. That attack had cost valuable energy. Maybe it had lost about 10 minutes of energy. Ren crawled to the other side of the tunnel through the small gap, then got up and continued running. The Hydra roared in frustration but didn't fire again. Instead, it approached the fallen living tunnel and began devouring it, recovering some of the spent energy. Each head could consume one of the huge beetle halves in an instant. Damn, that will give it about 5 more minutes of energy. It could do that all the way up, Ren thought, consuming beasts to maintain the pursuit. At 275 meters, the air was more breathable, but the mana was still dense. Another group of worms emerged from a side tunnel. The beasts froze upon sensing Ren, but the sound of the approaching Hydra sent them into panic. Ren was trapped in the middle of the fleeing worms. Their massive bodies pushed him against the walls while they writhed desperately. The Hydra's roar resonated closer. In desperation, Ren pushed between two worms, the space so tight he felt crushed. Just as he emerged from the other side, he saw the Hydra catch one of the lagging worms. One of the heads caught it with lethal precision, its jaws tearing flesh. But the other head kept the body moving while the first ate. Its eyes never stopped following Ren. At 250 meters, the tunnel narrowed. Ren could feel mana saturating his system. The potion was losing effect. His legs trembled from the effort while he crawled through a narrow passage. A section of the tunnel had partially collapsed, probably from the Hydra's vibrations. Ren crawled through the debris. Behind, the sound of destruction approached. A deep assassin appeared before Ren in the narrow tunnel. The beast hesitated, caught between its hunting instinct and its fleeing instinct. The narrow cave entrance vibrated intensely. Ren worried about another collapse, but he was lucky. The assassin completely forgot about Ren and decided to flee. Ren crawled to the cave's exit while the Hydra dug behind. His lungs burned. Mana saturated his body now that the potion no longer had effect. Each meter was a battle against exhaustion and energy overload. Ren finally emerged from the tunnel at 200 meters. A worm colony panicked upon feeling the vibrations, their bodies filling the tunnel in a chaotic mass. Ren had to jump over them, his feet finding small spaces between the writhing bodies. Behind, the Hydra finally broke through the wall. The beast was panting now, the chase's effort beginning to take its toll. Ren took advantage to gain ground. He knew this area, turned and climbed up a not-so-light slope that led to the conventional cave entrance. 150 meters, the first guard checkpoint. The air was lighter now, but his legs felt like lead. The backpack on his back seemed to weigh a ton. His hidden tunnel offered an alternative route, so he wouldn't have to explain. No, Ren thought while continuing to climb. No time for detours. The Hydra was getting closer and closer. The checkpoint appeared before Ren, the mana lamp's light shining through the entrance. 3 guards moved hurriedly, alerted by the vibrations shaking the tunnels.
Halt!
One shouted when he saw Ren climbing the slope.
What the hell? It's the lucky mushroom boy.
Another guard recognized him, his expression transforming from surprise to anger.
Why were you prowling in the lower levels? This time you really...
The wall behind Ren exploded. The Hydra emerged from the dust like a nightmare made real, its 2 heads covered in blood from the beasts it had devoured along the way.
Halt!
One shouted when he saw Ren climbing the slope.
The hell? It's the lucky mushroom boy.
Another guard recognized him, his expression transforming from surprise to anger.
Why were you prowling in the lower levels? This time you really.
The wall behind Ren exploded. The Hydra emerged from the dust like a nightmare made real, its two heads covered in blood from the beasts it had devoured along the way. One last effort, one final sprint. Ren had finished climbing the slope, having gained ground on the beast despite his exhaustion, as the beast wasn't in much better condition than him.
Run, it's a gold rank Hydra.
Ren's voice cracked with desperation and fatigue. The guards exchanged skeptical looks. At this level, barely 150 meters deep, the idea of a gold rank beast was as absurd as finding a dragon sunbathing in the academy garden.
Impossible.
Whispered the supervisor, his expression changing from disbelief to horrified recognition.
A diamond hydra. But they live more than 1,000 meters deep.
The guards barely had time to process his words when the supervisor grabbed his arm, his ice penguin partially manifesting. The Hydra roared, the sound making the mana lamps crack. One of its heads turned toward the guards while the other kept its gaze fixed on Ren. The other two guards instinctively backed away. Their beasts, an earth bear and a rock mongoose, fully manifested. Both beasts were bronze rank too, their power significant in normal circumstances but dwarfed by the terror before them.
Block the entrance,
ordered the supervisor while pulling Ren backward. His voice carried the authority of someone used to commanding in crisis situations.
We need to evacuate.
Knowledge flowed while Ren observed the guards' beasts, earth and rock control. The supervisor's ice penguin, Silver 2, was also a beast with ranged control capability. Maybe they're prepared for dead abyss beasts to contain hordes, Ren understood. The placement of the checkpoint, the specific combination of beasts, it wasn't random. They're designed for the very unlikely case of a horde. Hordes only come from the dead abyss, but loose monsters from the hordes are rarely found in the caves too. That's why they fear hordes in the caves. But they must only be here to buy time while reinforcements arrive if dead abyss beasts ever filter into the caves, to block the path.
Wait.
Ren resisted when the supervisor tried to drag him further back, an idea crystallizing in his mind.
Don't take me yet. Your ice, you can use it to slow it down.
What?
The slope.
Ren pointed to the ascending tunnel while the other guards began controlling earth and rock barriers.
If you freeze the climb, it'll be harder for it to scale.
The supervisor hesitated only for an instant.
Hydra shoot light rays, don't be an idiot and come.
Look.
Ren pointed.
Its movements are slower. It only has about 10 minutes of energy left at this height. It won't waste power on rays.
The supervisor evaluated the suggestion in an instant. His penguin fully manifested, beginning to cover the steep climb with a thick layer of ice.
More ice,
shouted Ren.
It needs to be thick enough.
The ice layer grew as they ascended, becoming thicker with each breath from the penguin.
Now,
he ordered his subordinates.
Block the entrance.
The earth bear and rock mongoose created layered barriers, compacted earth reinforced with rock formations. The sound of rock being pulverized approached. The Hydra was breaking up the slope a bit to get better footing. It roared again, but the sound was weaker. Without access to new prey, each movement brought it closer to exhaustion. The Hydra hit the blockade but couldn't break it, its strength no longer the same.
It won't cross,
Ren shouted over the noise.
Prey to feed on each movement weakens it more.
Another hit, weaker than the previous one. The Hydra was losing strength.
It's giving up,
murmured one of the guards while the impacts grew progressively feebler, hope creeping into his voice. Silence fell suddenly. The guards exchanged cautious looks.
Did it leave?
asked the one with the mongoose. Ren felt something was wrong. It was too soon for the Hydra to abandon its pursuit after investing so much energy. Knowledge screamed a warning in his mind, calculating that it should still have enough power for one last.
Get down,
he shouted, already diving for the ground. The power ray pierced the barriers as if they were paper, passing over their heads and leaving a trail of molten rock on the ceiling. The barrier had failed.
Damn, we're dead.
After that, only silence reigned.
No, it's over,
said Ren as they slowly stood.
That ray used the last of its energy. It needs to return to its vein now.
The echoes of the Hydra's slow departing steps confirmed his words. The beast was descending, deeper and deeper, where the increase in mana or eating other beasts would keep it alive. The supervisor turned to Ren, his expression a mixture of relief and suspicion.
You have a lot to explain, boy.
But Ren had fainted, his mouth foaming and his veins glowing, unmistakable sign of mana poisoning. The mushrooms in his hair flickered weakly, barely processing the dense ambient energy.
Damn.
The supervisor caught Ren's limp form before it hit the ground, noting the dangerous heat radiating from his small body.
We need to get him out of here and give him medicine fast. Peter,
he pointed to the mongoose guard.
Stay on watch.
What? Why me?
Peter looked nervously toward the tunnel where the Hydra had disappeared, his mongoose hugging his legs.
What if the Hydra returns?
The Hydra is already going to the depths.
The supervisor was already running toward the exit with Ren in his arms.
Shut up and watch.
Marco hugged his manifested mongoose tighter, both guard and beast trembling slightly.
We'll be back soon.
shouted the supervisor while disappearing up the upper tunnel with the bear guard.
Doesn't make me feel better.
Marco shouted into the empty tunnel, his voice echoing mockingly back at him. The mongoose made a sound that suspiciously resembled laughter.
Don't pretend you don't want to be here either.
Marcus accused his beast, which tried to look dignified despite its obvious nervousness. A distant echo made them both jump.
See? Even you're nervous.
Marco pressed against the wall.
Though if anyone asks, we'll say we maintained a stoic and brave watch.
A new echo made them both jump and hug each other.
But that doesn't mean we have to be in the middle of the tunnel. We can watch perfectly fine from behind that